First Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Ah, brilliant. So have you taken this to Nintendo yet? Have you said to Nintendo, by the way, I noticed how to make motion control games that are really good.
I
How about that happen,
if there's
guys?
anyone on Nintendo on this stream, listen, I'll make them some good motion control games. But I don't think they're very interested. To be honest, we actually talked to some people briefly when we were doing Joust, and I never got like a really clear answer. Just 'cause I don't think that they were super interested, and we didn't. We only got so far. But like I think, I had heard some stuff like, not having a single player mode might be problematic, for example, right? Like what would Johann Sebastian Joust single player mean? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't, you can't figure that out. What, you just like stand in your living room and like try not to move it too fast, or like it doesn't. That never like, whatever, it never stuck with them. So I don't know, ask Nintendo, but like if they want, I'm right here and I'll make them some sweet games.
You know what I'm gonna do after we're done with this show? I'm gonna ask Nintendo. I think they're gonna like it because I don't know when you talked to them last, but they're putting out a lot of games now that are at least about half of Nintendo Land is multiplayer only.
They are, and I think I'm trying to remember because I think one or two of them had seen it at like GDC and like these events and like E3, these events where we've shown it around. But yeah, no, I mean, someday it would be great to design stuff for their, because obviously they're interested in physical games too. I will say, I'd have to think more about the Wii U. I have to admit I was like a little disappointed when that hardware came out because it felt like this step back into the screen. I mean, now on one hand it's like different screens and that's exciting, but one of the key things behind Johann Sebastian Joust was this like eye-to-eye thing, and that like we're used to looking at each other when we play sports or board games or whatever, but when you're holding a video game controller, that like feels really weird because you're used to like looking at a screen. So I think that's like half the fun at Johann Sebastian Joust. It almost feels like you're doing something wrong or like something that you shouldn't be doing with video game controllers, and that's actually that subversion. Like that's a big word, but whatever. That subversion is like I think half of the like fun of that feeling and that experience.
Well, how do you think it would work with just Wii remotes, motion control? I mean, Motion Plus Wii remotes.
So the original version of Joust was prototyped for Wiimotes,
right?
And it was super fun. And now it's slightly less good for spectators because you don't have the light, which is so key to the experience of the current build of Joust. But it was still really fun. What I think I would do is use the speaker on the Wiimote to signal like who's in and who's not in and all this stuff. So you can imagine like kind of slow beeps and stuff that like coming out of the controllers themselves that would be signaling stuff about how you were doing or if you were out or not. So
could you have like a womp 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 when the guy screws up?
I'm still partial to this. Like right now, it's this explosion sound. So when you lose, and it just something that feels like really violent and kind of amazing about it. Like also satisfying to me. So I think I would stick with the like explode you when you lose.
That was the most polite response I've gotten from a terrible idea ever.
No, it's okay, man. It's okay. I have. But here's this is true. Here's the real secret about like game design, which is like literally 70% of your ideas are crap, like at least 70%, right? So the key is just to keep having ideas and keep making games until one sticks, right? Because like I've also worked on really totally failed projects that sound awesome on paper, but game design is like black magic, like until you try it, like you don't know. And that's the thing too, like sometimes you try wacky stuff that was like, oh, haha, this is kind of a funny idea. That just ends up being kind of amazing. And it's like, let me give you an example. So me and this guy Bennett Foddy, this Quap guy, who's part of Sports Friends, he made this game GURP. Have you played this game?
I haven't. I've heard of it. It's it came out after Quap, right?
Yeah, and this game is amazing. Like the first thing you do when we end this interview is that you should go and play GURP. It's like one of my all-time favorite games ever. And it's this crazy mountain climbing game. Anyway, so like last year I got super obsessed with this game. And then I was like, well, okay, how do we show this? Like, I want to show this at these like public local multiplayer events or whatever, but like it's kind of boring to watch somebody like hunched over a keyboard playing. So we were like, well, what if we like made a giant keyboard that you actually, so the part of the game is that you're like, you have to use all 26 keys on your keyboard to like slowly climb up these handholds in this mountain. And it's been described as Twister for your fingers. So we were like, what if it was just like Twister, like for your body? So I took 4 Dance Dance Revolution pads and made a giant keyboard, like with all 26 keys. And so then you're playing like on this giant keyboard, and like you're kind of on all fours, like holding your 2 hands and then your legs on like on another key, or maybe you're playing with 2 or 3 people all together, kind of coordinating. And this was one of those ideas that was like, haha, this will be funny, we'll try it once as a joke. But like, actually it was like way better than I ever could have expected. And since we've been showing it at all these parties, right? So we like showed it at GDC's experimental gameplay workshop last year. I just showed it at this big party in New York this past week. So that's like another example of like the really good game ideas you think you have on paper often aren't that good, and the kind of weird prototypes you just try on a lark often, and that's true of Johann Sebastian Joust, right? I was like, well, here's this idea of like moving in slow motion. I don't know, whatever, let's try this. And like, yeah, it was sweet. So I think that's like, this is a really good lesson, which is you can't be afraid to put out these just like really wacky ideas. Yeah, again, most of them will be crap, but like you won't know until you really think through all of them. So
Can you tell us about an idea that you really were confident, like, oh,
yeah.
of course this is going to be fantastic, but then when you played it, you didn't like it?
Yeah, so me and my colleagues back in Copenhagen, a big group of us were working on, because we were into this idea of face-to-face games. We had worked on this crazy game, Darkroom Sex Game. I don't know if you've ever heard about this.
I have, but I don't remember many details about it.
So it was this no graphics Wii game where you essentially had like virtual sex with each other or something. But
Okay.
it was kind of like, it was kind of this joke art exhibition where we would just say, hey, like fun Wiimote game, don't you want to play? And everyone's like, yeah, I love fun Wiimote games. And suddenly they find themselves having this like really awkward gameplay with only sound and rumble, where it's this kind of rhythm game back and forth between 2 people. And in fact, this is crazy mode where there's 4 people and there's partners kind of competing against each other. Anyway, we don't have to go too much into that, but the cool thing about that game was like, whoa, if we have no graphics, we have this game where you look at each other and like, whoa, let's explore that in a more mainstream way. So before Joust, before like I really figured out how to properly do that, we were like, well, what if we made this wizard dueling game with like Harry Potter versus Voldemort? I mean, not like actually with the Harry Potter IP, but that same idea where you're like, you know, there's this moment in every Harry Potter movie where he's like has the wand and then they like shoot at each other and there's like colored lightning and they're like doing this whole wizard battle or whatever. We were like, oh, we'll make that. And it'll be like Street Fighter, but like in the real world with wands and stuff. Turns out other people have explored this idea, and it's problematic for a lot of reasons. So anyway, we worked on this game in different iterations for like over a year, you know, when we had time, and you know, on this grant that we got, this art grant that we got to kind of explore it. And in the end, like there were just a lot of problems with it, and in terms of like making it a deep system and making it fun to play and kind of all this stuff. So I mean, but like it sounded like such a solid idea on paper, but until we really got into the like hairy meat of it or whatever.
Gross.
Yeah, that wasn't a good metaphor, was it?
No, I enjoyed it. You really picture biting into that clumpy, hairy
right.
piece of burger.
But you know, here's the other thing. From doing that, you know, I learned a lot of. I think that like it took me a lot of failed prototypes to really get to my philosophy of motion control game design.
Right.
I should also mention this stupid game Button, which like kind of amazingly ended up showing at IGF and is now on Steam and like Xbox Live Indie. That was another kind of joke. We were like, this is true. We were like literally drunk at my birthday party in 2010, and we were like, oh man, like wouldn't this be a funny idea? And then we kind of just like threw together this stupid prototype a few weekends later at some retreat that we did every year in Denmark, and turned out it was like really fun. So again, one of the lessons I've taken, at least with party games, it's different for regular games. With party games is like, to me, it's important that it's fun from the very beginning. Like when we played Joust or when we played Button, like the very first playtest, even though it was only like half done or whatever, was still really fun. Whereas some of these other kind of like Wiimote ideas we try to force, it was like, oh man, that doesn't quite work, but like I really think this is going to be fun someday if we just like keep working on it or whatever. And then you just keep forcing it, but you like never really get it there. So I don't know. That's like a big lesson I've learned. So.